just think for a minute, how would you respond to someone being that kind of brutally honest with you and even reiterating multiple times that they like you, knowing that they have been a part of this server for, close to a year at this point? How would you respond to something like that? Some, I would say, objective criticism in voicing their concerns with you. Now I'm going to show you the direct opposite of whatever you just came up with. Pirate Software responds to them saying, "Doomer detected. Honestly, if all you're going to do is doom post, just wait for me to be done and stop busying yourself with it. I'm literally writing right now, lol." Pirate Software is freaking out right now, and he's coming to grips with the fact that this decline in viewership and subscribers might actually be an issue for him. And even with him recognizing what's going on, he still cannot take accountability. So this was a message that was screenshotted from Pirate Software's Discord, and I received a screenshot of this message, and this message had just been taken on July 15th, today, as of recording this. So Thor put up this message in his Discord, "Going to be real for the people in the back who don't get it. You know where this road of attacks and well poisoning ends? It ends with shutting down company and firing everyone if they manage to poison enough people. It ends with no longer being able to support the ferret rescue unless I can snag a job that supports it. People think this is some ego trip shit. Fuck no. I have people to take care of. I am not going to sit by and let that shit happen, and you're dumb for suggesting it. Get fucking real. Seriously." Now, I'm not gonna lie, reading that, I had personally a very visceral reaction to seeing someone have such a lack of self-awareness, but I wanna make sure you guys have a full understanding of the exposition leading into this. As you saw right here, he says at the bottom here, "I am not going to sit by and let that shit happen, and you're dumb for suggesting it." He's referencing some lead-up messages, and I have those. So this is the start of it. Pirate Software doesn't at everyone. Too many people spamming about Heartbound's codebase. Update out tomorrow with Fern's new dialogue, tidbits of architecture, philosophy, reasoning here for the goblins and kobolds so you don't get overwhelmed by people spouting nonsense. Bedtime now. And then he links this tweet here. Now this here is a response that Pirate Software had saying, "I had a few thousand people dogpile into my stream about this today," and he goes into detail talking about specifically what he was doing when it comes to coding and why he did it, talking about his shader system that he had made instead of actually compiling shaders. Now I actually interviewed Level 5 Fish, the guy who showed up on Coding Jesus's video to break down the Heartbound code. I'll leave a link down in the description to Coding Jesus's video, but the interview that I had with Level 5 Fish will be coming out tomorrow. But now to keep it focused on what we're talking about in this video, these are some of the follow-ups here. Thor's talking about the message that he just put out saying, "Also timed out and banned people for putting middle finger emojis on the announcement. Idiot behavior." And now you're going to notice that people that are there for Pirate Software, like this person here, are trying to tell Pirate, hey, maybe don't react to the hate. And so this person here is saying, "I think you're giving them satisfaction by even reacting to it." And two people said, "Yeah, that one." And then Thor replied to them saying, "When I have hundreds of thousands of people being misled and it's poisoning the well online about who I am obligated to counter." And if that's how Pirate Software feels about it, for sure. If I was in the same boat, yeah, I'd want to clarify people if they have a misunderstanding of who I am. I would say that most people aren't in that boat for Pirate Software. I think they're just watching him and going off of his actions, but I'm digressing. And so another person replies to that message that Pirate Software said and said, "Countering is timing out and banning. Talking about it is just going to rile up trolls more." 100%. Pirate Software responded back to them, "Timing out and banning does not counter misinformation about my work. Evidence does, provided now." Now, one piece of evidence that he really liked to bring up is the fact that Heartbound apparently could run on a smart fridge, except we talked about that and it's looking like it was actually only mirroring to the screen of the fridge. Matter of fact, someone was able to get Heartbound to run on an Apple Watch. But again, he could be talking about other pieces of evidence that he's talking about, maybe specifically with his coding. Moving on though, someone else replied to him talking about the hundreds of thousands of people. He says, "I think you are at risk of throwing further gasoline on the fire. If it's too hard to ignore, maybe try laying low for a while." Not a bad idea. And then this message leads into another one that I wanted to include, but I just wanted you guys to have a bit more context. These two individuals are kind of talking back and forth to each other. And this person says, "Honestly, having seen this kind of situation happen again and again, the only thing you can do is defend yourself and wait, hoping the internet will find a new target. That's sadly just how the internet works. You can't reason with it, you can't beat it." True! You don't win against the internet. It's just, that's not what happens. You do just have to lay low. A lot of the Mr. Beast stuff that happened, a lot of it ended up kind of fizzling out after it got addressed, and then they stopped talking about it. Pirate Software had his moment of address, especially with the Stop Killing Games initiative, fully ramping up and getting the signatures, all that stuff. He could have just been done there, but he didn't stop. Laying low could just be the form of him playing Noida, like he loves to do on his streams, and not addressing anything, and not having a ban counter up in the corner counting all of the people getting banned out of his chat. But that'll come later. Now, Pirate Software replies to that individual that just said, I think you're throwing further gasoline on it, and says, ah, yes, the streamer, laying low, lol. I'm assuming he's interpreting that in a much more severe way, like to just get off of streaming, which I don't think is the only solution, like I just stated. Continuing on though, this person is responding to that one I just previously showed you with the honestly having seen this kind of situation thing, and said, well, I'm not sure those are the only ways to handle it. And Pirate, I believe, still talking about this previous one, says, insane request. Or I'm sorry. Insane request. Moving on, Pirate says this, you don't have to reason with the bullshit takes, but you do have to defend yourself from shit like this. Otherwise, the people in the middle that don't know anything will just instantly side with the only voice in the room. But that was followed up by this, but these people don't even care if you're right. How does banning thousands of people off of your live stream when they're asking questions and seeing if you're going to address something, and then you using the same counterpoint every single time, how does that convert people into understanding your side more? Clearly, the arguments that you are making to defend yourself or to counter what you believe is bullshit is not convincing people. What that would tell me if I was in Pirate Software's situation is that maybe I need to think about the arguments that I'm making and the fact that they're not working when people are asking me. Like I've watched some of his streams. People will come in and ask those questions and he'll give the exact same talking points again and again and again. He's just sounding like a broken record, and that's not convincing anybody. And if that's all you're doing, you know, shocker here, maybe there is something wrong with your argument. Maybe there is some legitimate criticism coming your way, and that's why people aren't satisfied with your response. Let me give you an example. In my previous video, link to it right now, he makes the argument in response to Coding Jesus going through his code and like saying, hey, improve it in this way, this way, this way. His response to this argument is that it doesn't need to be more optimized because it's running for people, and on top of that, it runs on a smart fridge. Now, I actually agree with Pirate Software's first argument. As someone like from the perspective of a consumer, I honestly don't care if his code doesn't look absolutely perfect. I care that it's done at this point quick enough so that people aren't actually going to be waiting a decade to get the game that they have purchased and were expecting to come way sooner. If this is just a single one-off game for him that he is just making as a solo project, yeah, the organization doesn't matter as long as the game is running properly, is not riddled with bugs, and at this point, I just want it out. And so from that perspective, yes, Pirate Software is correct. He doesn't need to optimize the game more. But instead of choosing to just say that, instead of just choosing to say, hey, you know what, the coding isn't the greatest, I just want to get it out to people sooner, you chose to more than double down well past that and make this argument that it's optimized well enough to run on a smart fridge, which doesn't actually seem to be the case. You instead argue that it's so well optimized that it can run on a smart fridge. That's where people don't care if you're right, because now you're using an argument that isn't sound. You are ego tripping to use that excuse. But like I said, so this is that first one, but these people don't even care if you're right. And then the next one here is Pirate responding to them saying, you know who does care? The tens of thousands on the sidelines. And then this other Discord member makes an excellent point to respond to that. They say, those people are coming here or to the stream and seeing you show numbers of bans you have. Without context, it looks like boasting. Trolls are giving that context already, and gamifying it with ban announcements and counters is just encouragement. You're gonna fight this fight for the rest of your career this way. I have had it kind of in my head that it has started to become more and more of an echo chamber for Pirate Software, and it absolutely has, but it's really honestly refreshing to see so many people in his Discord that are still trying to support him and still trying to help him, like still trying to give good points like this one, like, hey, you're gamifying people being toxic. You are putting a number, and people like to watch a number go up, in your streams if people act bad. You are incentivizing toxic behavior by including the ban number. And how does Pirate Software respond to this? I have fought that shit for 6 months without the timer. Your route does nothing. I'm gonna go out on a limb here because I don't have the evidence, but I'm pretty sure the amount of bans and the amount of people leaving Thor's, community, like the over 100,000 people that have left over just the last couple weeks, I feel like that's more than what he was dealing with the OnlyFang stuff. I could be wrong, someone could fact check me on that, but I do believe that, gamifying toxic behavior is definitely not even close to helping. Kind of taking a pause from that subject, some other people were chatting in the Discord talking about potential slander claims. So slander has a legal bar though. Just look at the Turd versus Depp case, and then I don't think he's met that. And so someone responded, isn't there a case to be made for him having lost revenue due to the slander? To which Thor responded, yes. Now, I've personally gone out of my way to make sure that any claims that I'm making about Pirate and his behavior or actions, that I am showcasing exactly what I'm talking about in my videos. And regardless of what people have said over the videos that I've been making or anything like that, I know that I haven't been acting in bad faith. I truly believe and go off of the evidence I see to make the points that I do. And I would say that although yes, I have been essentially covering this entire death spiral that Pirate Software has gone through, I have done my best to be charitable and make arguments and agree with Pirate Software where I can agree. And also, if anything that I have said or brought up ends up being untrue and I get asked to like do a cease and desist or like apologize, I don't have an issue with that. If I ended up actually screwing up, that's not an issue to say I was wrong and clear the air. But I'm actively making an effort to make sure that what I'm sharing with you guys is what is happening, not just going out of my way to speculate. I've just been blessed with the fact that he can't stop screwing up and doing it in such a messy manner where he has this entire history of himself being online. Like him saying that he lost 2.5 years of game development to COVID when originally he was saying that he didn't even have COVID, and then suddenly he had COVID for 9 months. Like it's just all there and documented. And now I want to transition over to a different conversation that was had where Pirate Software just completely in the face of someone who has been a part of his community talks about how they're upset with the fact that the game has been in production for so long at this point and expresses their frustration, and then Pirate bitches at them for their lack of tact. Now, these messages aren't from that individual, but this is where the ball kind of gets rolling. So this individual says, to be honest, the amount of content in the game is disappointing considering how long it's been in development. I had so much hope for it when it was first started. Does anyone know why game is taking so long to be released fully? They follow up and say, I really wish the best for the game, but it's kind of crazy how unfinished the game is after 10 whole years. I understand that life gets in the way and the developers are trying to make the game as good as possible, but it is unjust to all the people who funded this project over 10 years ago and only have so much content to show for it. Now, mild correction, from my understanding, 8 years is as far as it has been in development. I believe it was 2017 is when the game actually hit early access where people could purchase it. Maybe the Kickstarter started a bit further behind that. Now, somebody responds to that individual having that gripe with the game development. They say, there is actually a staggering amount of content in the game. Tons of hidden secrets, multiple routes, alongside a whole ARG built into the game. So I feel it is a little disingenuous to claim it's lacking content. On a single route through the game, you could argue that the game is a little short. I've made this point before, but the game is also halfway done, with Animus being the middle point of the game. I think a lot of misinformation is being spread about the game because of some site metrics say it takes like 3 to 4 hours to completionist 100% the game, which is just incorrect. Animus is the most complicated part of the game due to the sheer volume of routes and options that are available, differing characters and points of view needing to be portrayed, which Thor saying multiple times they've struggled with the writing and have reworked multiple parts because they're unhappy with the result. With the game being a story game, a choose your own adventure, it makes sense to make sure the story is battened down. You wouldn't want an FPS game to release with half-baked gunplay. Likewise, nobody wants a story game with half-baked narrative. They also want a game to be fully released after having owned it for potentially 8 years in early access. But you could still agree with them that yes, having all of these different alternative dialogue trees and all of this in a narrative-driven game is a very big deal, and it is going to consume a lot of time. I think you can give that ground. I mean, Pirate Software himself has repeatedly, and I mean repeatedly, talked about how the main bottleneck for the game is the writing and how difficult it is for him. Does that justify 8 years in development? I don't think so, but that is subjective. Now, this is the individual that I was talking about when I introduced this, and they were replying to that message that we just read through. They say, by the time the game is done, my son will be in college, and I might be misunderstanding, but are you saying it's not even halfway done? I like Thor, but at this point, I feel like my money has been wasted. Between buying the game, buying Heartbound merch, subscribing to his Twitch and YouTube, it just doesn't feel like I'm supporting an indie dev with a dream as much as a Twitch streamer with a side project. Its priorities have changed drastically. We haven't had an update on Heartbound since May 28th, presumably because of the game jam coming up. Perhaps he should take a year off of that and focus on something else instead of telling everybody for months that Animus is done, which there is video proof of him saying. Again, I like Thor and I truly want to believe his motives are good, but man, it's hard. That is one of the most like real and authentic and honest arguments or critiques that have been given to Pirate Software. He's just being honest. His son could potentially be in college at this point. 8 years, that's a lot of time. And because of this lack of progress, and apparently it only being halfway done, based off what this other person was saying, yeah, that would feel wasted. To spend all this time on his YouTube, Twitch, watching the live streams, buying even merch for the game. You can't blame the guy. And he says it twice. He likes Thor, but this is so tough for him because he's just facing the reality of what's been going on. That Pirate's priorities have drastically changed. And just to show you guys, this is a screenshot of this person's about. They've been a part of his Discord for 9 months, getting close to a year now. This isn't someone that just popped in, hopped on a soapbox, and started, announcing all their gripes with the development. They've been around. And then they followed up with this. I'm assuming based on the context of what's in this message that they were talking with someone about the game being review bombed. They say, well, I'm sure it has to do with everything that's going on with OnlyFans, but after looking at some of the most recent commented reviews, they are definitely valid. I wish he would focus more on the game as well. Just think for a minute, how would you respond to someone being that kind of brutally honest with you and even reiterating multiple times that they like you, knowing that they have been a part of this server for, close to a year at this point? How would you respond to something like that? Some I would say objective criticism in voicing their concerns with you. Now I'm going to show you the direct opposite of whatever you just came up with. Pirate Software responds to them saying, Doomer detected. Honestly, if all you're going to do is Doom post, just wait for me to be done and stop busying yourself with it. I'm literally writing right now, lol. Then it looks like that message got deleted. They might have been banned from the Discord. I'm not sure, but that message gets deleted. And then Pirate responds to it, good faith criticism is not claiming that your son will be in college by the time the game comes out. It's just stating things as raw and aggressive as possible while being an ass about it. Fuck's sake. That's what Pirate got out of that message? Brother's just telling you that life has moved on for him and that his kid has grown up into a fucking adult. He's trying to make a point, brother. And this is just rich. Pirate Software then says, you can just be like, hey man, when is this coming out? Not writing a novel about all the imaginary shit that is going to happen before it does. I'm sorry, is Pirate Software critiquing or policing someone else and how they're using tact? A dude that can't help but be arrogant even in the face of a therapist calling him out for being arrogant? A man who can't help but respond to every single criticism as condescendingly as possible? He's the guy giving lessons on tact in his Discord. And then Pirate ends up screenshotting that part about by the time the game is done, my son will be in college, and says, the fuck are you on about? So yes, he did say that. Shit's not necessary. Rage bait banned. Insane behavior.
Insane behavior.
How is that rage bait? Sorry if I'm a little wet now. My dog had to poo and it was raining outside. I think the biggest thing for me going through and looking at how Pirate is treating the other people within his Discord, people that aren't just trolling, that aren't just like screwing around, that are honestly like making earnest attempts to try to give him any ideas for how to combat the toxicity that they themselves are also dealing with by, just watching him on stream and watching all these people show up and be toxic. They're making an earnest attempt to try to talk to Pirate Software and work with him on this. And he shuts all of them down, treats them like complete morons, and literally bans a guy who is venting his frustration about buying his game and being bothered by the fact that it's taken so long for the game to be fully released. And to see Pirate recognize that this is spelling a serious issue for him if, his viewership keeps dropping, people keep leaving, that he is going to have to downsize, that he's going to have to fire parts of his moderation team or scale down the ferret rescue. Realizing that these are serious issues that are going to be presented towards him if he wants to keep running things the way that he is. And instead of having even the slightest bit of self-awareness, it's people poisoning the well. It's literally everything except his behavior. For me, this is probably the peak example of his ego taking over everything. Many people have said it before, but like out of anything that's going to cause the downfall of Pirate Software, it's himself. Now, maybe I've missed the mark on how I've interpreted or looked at these messages. Like maybe I've gotten a little bit of bias just because the tact that he was using with the people that he was talking with in his own Discord just irked me that type of way. So I'd like to hear what you guys think. Throw it down in the comments below. If you ended up enjoying this video, consider giving it a thumbs up, helps boost it in the algorithm, and subscribing if you're new here, want to see more content. The last thing before you go, I've got a little special announcement, a limited time special offer for you guys. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, this is Quintheo Quintheo.shop, we are doing merch, limited time merch that is ending this Friday. And as you can see here, the SS Double Down now boarding. And as you can see here, we have this hoodie and shirt with these super cool decals. The first one here is showing the "it's not doubling down if you're right" with a very cool Quintheo pirate. And on the back side, my favorite part is "for those that will scream he's doubling down. Yes, I damn well am," with the beautiful SS Double Down in the background here. Now I'll leave a link down in the description for this merch, and I should let you guys know as well that 35% of the revenue generated from this limited time merch will be going to Ross, the leader of the Stop Killing Games initiative. He has done an incredible job at getting so much attention onto the Stop Killing Games initiative and really giving it that final push that got us over that 1,000,000 signature goal. But if the merch isn't your thing and you still want to support Ross, I will be providing a link to his website, Accursed Farms here, where he has a dedicated place to receive donations. Now, Ross has said multiple times he's not interested in the drama aspects of this, so please, like, I am not trying to rope him into talking about any of this drama. And I think the guy has more than earned the donations that he's receiving for being such a huge help in trying to get the foot in the door to have a conversation about consumer rights and preserving video games. But that brings us to a close. Thank you for sticking around to the end if you did, and I'll see you guys later. Adios. Peace. Bye.